can you give us a little bit of an insight on you, your
Yeah, of course.
background, your creds?
Yeah,
Love to hear.
of course. Yeah, so I'm a registered public health nutritionist with the Association for Nutrition. I have a PhD in clinical medicine and a master's in public health, and I have a biomedical sciences and pharmacology background.
Wow.
So I have a lot of sort of experience looking at population health, how we can help improve health across the board for a lot of people. And that's why I chose nutrition as my specialty, because nutrition is clearly the best tool we have to affect real change in health across the board.
Totally.
And whilst I was doing my master's in nutrition, I specialized in maternal and child nutrition. So really looking at this amazing window of opportunity that we have to improve our health by improving the health of mothers, pre-pregnancy, pregnancy and postpartum, and children, especially in the first few years of life. So there's a really special window of opportunity in the first 2 years. And then there's several others later in childhood and adolescence. Adolescents are often really overlooked, like they're left off the conversation, but there's a huge opportunity to improve health there as well. And yeah, so there's a lot of, I've done research on this, I've published it, I've written a book called Everybody Should Know This, which goes through the life course and really talks about the different windows of opportunity and why food is so important and how we can better use it as a tool to improve our health and to stand us in better stead for the future as well.
Amazing. Thank you. And just on ultra processed food, I think there's so much confusion around it. I'm sure you get that. Can you just explain to us exactly just what is an ultra processed food? What kind of foods fit into that category? What is and what isn't?
Right. So yes, the classification for ultra processed food was designed by a really famous and very good epidemiologist. So it was designed as a research tool. It's a NOVA classification, it's called, and it has these 4 buckets, like these 4 classes. So group 1 is your unprocessed food. It's, you know, the apples, it's the potatoes, it's the peas. It's like exactly as you'd imagine. Then we have culinary ingredients, which is like olive oil, it's flour, it's things that you use to cook with that aren't their whole food necessarily, but they're minimally processed to make them into a cooking ingredient. Then you have the processed foods, which are foods that we've done something with to make them easier to preserve or to cook with. So a really good example of this is sweet corn. You've just taken the corn kernels off the cob, you've boiled them, you've put them in a tin. That's it. So a lot of tinned foods, frozen foods, dried foods, nothing's really been added to them. Maybe a bit of sugar, maybe a bit of salt, it depends. But other than that, it's a fairly straightforward process. Processed food also includes things like yogurt, which is just essentially churned milk. So it's things that are created by transforming a whole food. So bread is a good example of that as well. Ultra processed foods are this NOVA group 4. And these are the foods that are distinctively industrially processed. So they are made in factories. They have a lot of additives added to them. So things that you wouldn't find in a kitchen. And the additives are there specifically to either improve texture, lengthen the shelf life, or improve color or flavor in a way that doesn't come from the original ingredients. So these foods also typically have high energy density, so they have high calorie content, and low nutrient density, so they contribute very little in terms of micronutrients, vitamins, fiber, the actual useful things that we need. And so these ultra processed foods are the ones that have been shown in several large studies to be associated with poorer health outcomes. So the more of these ultra processed foods you eat, the more likely you are to suffer with things like depression, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, the list kind of goes on. There's been lots of studies looking at different outcomes. And so the classic example of an ultra processed food might be like a soda. So you would never be able to make it at home. It has no nutritional qualities. It's high in sugar. Like there's no saving it.
That's the key point, isn't it? It's basically if you don't recognize the ingredients, isn't it? If you wouldn't have them in your kitchen cupboard, you wouldn't be able to make it at home. That's kind of how you can tell.
You can. And also they don't look anything like the original food. So when you think of like a corn tortilla chip, it doesn't look anything like corn, does it? And like it's often a flavor that's like a cheese flavored corn tortilla chip. Like what is that? So it's an ultra processed food. And so it's these foods now. So I'm also the head nutritionist at Zoe, which is a science and nutrition company. And we do a lot of work to essentially look to improve the way that we can help people actually make food choices. Because at the moment, the majority of our food environment is made up of ultra processed foods, and more than
Shocking, isn't it?
50%, yeah, more than 50% of our calories daily come from ultra processed foods. And in children, it's up to like 72% of their calories daily, right? So what we're doing at Zoe is we're actually in the middle of developing a tool that's designed to help the consumer pick the right foods,
Yeah,
because the Nova
so
classification, as I
helpful.
said, is designed for research. So, so there is some nuance, Charlie. Like, so people, I've debated this on like live TV before, and that it's always the same thing. It's like, what about baked beans? And I'm like, oh my God, listen, if we were in a situation where baked beans was the problem, we wouldn't
Yeah,
be having this conversation, right? So,
yeah,
but there is nuance. Like baked beans, if you like baked beans, and actually that's the way to get you to eat more beans, then we're not trying to stop people from ever eating baked
yeah,
beans. But we
totally.
do know that reducing the overall intake of ultra processed foods is really beneficial. So we just want to get from a place
Yeah,
of, instead of eating like 65% of your calories from ultra processed food, let's bring it down to 20. And just for context, the UK is the worst in Europe. So Italy has
is
about
that right?
14%. Yeah. Italy has 14%
Okay.
of calories from ultra processed
Yeah,
foods. So it's not impossible. Our neighbors are doing it. We just need to like, we
totally.
need the government to take action, change our food environment. And in the meantime, we need to educate ourselves to essentially stop buying the stuff. If we don't buy it, they can't sell it to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk a lot about the Laws report. That's kind of where I saw you talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So are these statistics kind of in that report? And what is that report, just for the kind of general consumer?
So the Lords report, so the Lords, House of Lords decided to run an inquiry looking at what's going on in terms of ultra processed food, the state of the nation's health with regards to diet related diseases. So they launched this like earlier this year, and they asked for evidence from a really long list of experts, including industry, scientists, medics, like really a really long list of really great people. Um, so Professor Tim Spector, who's the co-founder of Zoe, went into the House of Lords and gave evidence, and then I followed up with the House of Lords and just gave some policy ideas and some sort of actionable ways of making some of the changes. So lots of us contributed, and they took all of this evidence together and they reviewed everything they heard from everybody, essentially, and then wrote this really beautiful report. Now, it's extremely long,
Yes,
but it's broken into
I'm sure.
chapters. You can find it online. It's free to access. So you can read the summary, or you can read the full report, or read the sections that you're interested in. But it's really a recap of all the evidence from all the experts, and then they also have proposals of like, how can we change this? What can we do? And essentially, the way this works is now the government has a set timeline within which they have to respond.
Yeah,
So they've got until the 6th of January to respond in how they're going to take this forward. Now, unfortunately, historically, a similar reports to this. So Henry Dimbleby famously headed one up in 2020, and it just nothing happened.
right.
So now
Yeah,
the hope is that, now of course then COVID happened then. So, but the hope is that with this one, there's a lot of momentum behind it. Really great people contributed to it. And there's quite a lot of pressure, I think, on government to do something about the food environment,
yeah,
because the public is more aware of like how
totally.
it's not helping us.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I'm hoping for change. I'm hopeful.
And what? Okay, and what about, so interesting. What about kids, like toddlers and kids
Yeah.
specifically? What are the long-term effects of eating these kind of specific ultra-processed foods?
Right. So it's a really good question, because we don't have
We don't
data.
know. Yeah,
Well, so we have data like for, like a decade. So we have enough data to see that children who have a higher consumption of ultra processed foods in in toddlerhood and childhood have a higher risk of several outcomes. So obesity, type 2 diabetes, and mental health issues. Now, ultra processed foods have been growing quite exponentially. So technically, they entered the food system after the Second World War, but they've only really become this pervasive in the past like 10
yeah,
years. So it's been a real step change in just how available they've become. And when we look at the food manufacturing industry in the UK, some manufacturers solely produce ultra processed foods. They produce no minimally processed or no healthier foods, basically. So there's a real problem with the industry in that it's a very profitable business, ultra processed food. They're cheap to make, and because they don't fill us up. They're not satiating. We eat more than we need to or would if it was whole foods. So it's a very good product, right?
Yeah.
People eat it, they want more of it. It's cheap to make, which means you can also do deals with it. So like half price, but buy one, get one free. It's always on ultra processed foods. And because there's no industry regulation, there is nobody to say, oh, actually, we'd really rather you didn't do the buy one, get one free on those foods. Let's do the buy one, get one free on lentils, please. Or like, there's no one to say this, right? So, at the moment, the real problem as well is we have a growing food insecurity in the UK. So a lot of people can't afford to feed their families. And so there's also financial pressure towards selecting these ultra processed food products, which tend to be cheaper.
Yeah.
But the real problem here is that they're cheaper, but they don't fill you up. So you can buy more of them for the same money, but your kids are likely to still feel quite hungry eating them.
Yeah.
Not to mention they're more likely to be deficient in essential micronutrients.
Yeah.
So it's a real problem, and we have to really act, especially for toddlers and children. We also don't have very strict school regulations in this country. So school food is widely variable, depending on the school you're at, basically. And we need to... So as parents, like our main concern is how can we ensure that the food environment we provide at home is the best it can be?
Is the best
because
possible.
At the moment, that's actually the best thing we can do. And it's flipping the narrative of, historically, I think our grandmothers, for example, they would have the cookie jar and they'd have the treat drawer. And that's because they really were quite rare. So cookies and treats are something you would have at home. But nowadays, it's the opposite. Like, when you're outside the home, all there is on offer is ultra processed cookies and bars and snacks. And so we almost have to say, okay, how do we change the narrative at home where this is where the best food environment is, knowing full well that when kids step outside the house, they're going to be bombarded with adverts, and there's going to be bombarded with availability.
They're going to eat it,
Do you know, it's funny, I do my shopping online, right?
Yep.
To my food shop. Sometimes we'll go to the supermarket. And I remember, like, when we go to the supermarket, it is so tricky because as we're going around the aisles, the kids are like, oh my God, Mummy, can we have this? Oh my God, Mummy.
Yeah.
Because there's all these like child eye level cupcakes, cookies, and colourful Peppa Pig this and cartoon that. Foods they've never seen in the house, mostly.
Right.
And they're like, hang on a minute, can we have that? And it's like, no, why not? It's not very healthy for you, darling. But why is there so many of them?
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's literally, you see it roll out.
It's everywhere.
So
and birthday
hard.
parties and, it is everywhere.
Everywhere.
So, as you say, it's just about kind of bringing those whole foods into the home, I guess.
It
as much
is.
as you possibly can.
Exactly. And it's about having, what you want to have at home is an environment where the meals they're having and the snacks they have access to are healthier. So as much minimally processed or whole foods, and meals that are made with minimally processed or whole food ingredients, because then we're really reducing the amount of calories that children are getting from ultra processed foods. Yeah. So it is hard. Like, I speak to a lot of parents and it feels like a big responsibility for parents to have to do this, but that's just the state of the food environment we're in right now.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a comment now about going to the shop and it's true. Like, I
can't see it.
It's saying I can't even go with the kids to the shop because they just ask to buy sweets, and it's so hard to say no 100 times. And so, like, my after like the recent time we went to the supermarket, I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to bring them, actually.
Yeah.
So, like, shop online.
Too, of course, all the time. It's everywhere. Yeah.
It's everywhere. Shop online, and honestly, like, take them places that don't have. I mean, even the playground. There, you go to the playground, and there's the ice cream man and the slushy shop, and it is well. So, really educating our kids and saying that Mummy's not saying no because she doesn't want you to have something you like. I'm saying no because it's not good for your body. It's not going to help you grow strong. It's not going to give you energy. It's not going to make you feel good.
Yeah.
And it's not about saying no to everything, but really classic example. So the other day we went to the supermarket and there was a major meltdown because I didn't let them buy the cupcakes that had literally about 250 ingredients on the back.
Wow.
We got home. I said, I promise, as soon as we get home, Mummy will bake some cupcakes with you. And so we had tears for 2 minutes, but then we got home and I baked cupcakes with them.
How delicious.
And they were so happy. And honestly, it does take about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And also,
so
like,
my kids actually don't notice the difference.
Mine are, mine are way better. Mine are so much better.
And actually just swap out the ingredients for, healthier ingredients, they actually don't notice.
They love it. Like, we add almond, we add desiccated coconut in, like, and they absolutely love it. They're like, Mummy, delicious. And it's exactly. And so much more fun. So I think, we have to help ourselves as well. So if it gets to that point where actually going to the supermarket is this challenge every time, go back to the online shop. I mean, I'm just seriously like, do what we can to help ourselves.
Totally.
Because the exposure is constant. Now, hopefully, if the new laws are brought in place, there will be some controls over advertising and the displaying of foods. But until we get to this point, we have to like just try to create an environment in the home and navigate the outside environment as best we can without exposing our children to constant ultra processed food messaging, which is everywhere.
So with all this in mind, what we're doing with Rumble Tums, what do you think about it? What's your thoughts on it?
Honestly, like, I think it's a really good idea because it is hard if you're a working parent and you don't love to cook, especially. Like, I think not everyone likes cooking, by the way, and not only does everyone not like it, not only does everyone not like it, but a lot of people don't have the nutrition education, the cooking education to actually cook. So, as a side note, I would urge anyone who's interested to learn how to cook to invest in it. It is a skill for life that will support your health and your family's health. And your children can then learn from you how to cook. It's essential. We've lost this in our culture and we need to do it again. But so what you guys are doing, creating actual homemade meals that can just be pulled out of the freezer and given to children as a whole food, nourishing, and it's balanced, I think it's a really good idea. And it's just so helpful for parents to have that. And they might not need it every day, but those days when you're poor on time and maybe you haven't done the shop and you're trying to find something that you can just quickly pull together for a family meal for your kids, it's so helpful, I think, to have things like Rumble Tums to hand, because parents can have the reassurance that they're giving their kids something that doesn't have the additives, the xenobiotics, as we call them, and that is actually nourishing and won't be contributing to worse metabolic health later.